Welcome to Kicks and Minivans, the podcast for dads who love sneakers. I'm your host, KG. However you're watching and listening, man, we're glad you're here. Thanks for tuning in and joining us for this episode. This episode is brought to you by our sponsor, NA Solutions. Nate is a fantastic leader and leadership coach. He is passionate about helping people unleash their best from within. And in this podcast, we are all about helping men get to their healthiest space. We want to help men win in marriage and parenting, and I believe the best way to do that is by helping men be the healthiest version of themselves. And Nate is a great resource and tool to have if you feel like you are stuck and can't get to the next level, personally, professionally, whatever the case may be. You can go over to n8leader.com, schedule a free consultation with him. He's not pushy, he's not salesy. He just wants to help you be at your best. And if he can do that, he wants to be able to do that. So again, NA Solutions, go to n8leader.com, schedule your free consultation today. So this week's kick of the week, today as I'm recording this, is May the 4th. If you ain't a nerd like me, May the 4th is Star Wars Day. May the Force be with you. May the 4th be with you. So today's kick of the week is the Adidas Dame 5. This is a Star Wars collab. This is based on Luke's lightsaber in Return of the Jedi, Episode 6. I'm a nerd. I love Star Wars, man. Like, I love Star Wars more than Marvel or DC at this point. And so, had to bust these ones out for Star Wars Day today. But as I've said before, you know, I collect Jordans. I love Jordans. The only other one that I'm really as interested in is the Dame Lillard line with Adidas. They're my favorite basketball shoes. The Dame 5 in particular is probably my favorite basketball shoe of all time, although I got a pair of Dame 8s right now, and I really love those, man. It's hard to find 5s anymore. You can't really find them as much. I've had a lot of different pairs of 5s that I've played on the court with. This is the only one that I got to not wear on the court, but just to rock in general in life. And so really love these ones, man. The details on these are absolutely insane. Love them so much. Even down to the insides. You can't really see it as well on that. But yeah, that's the kick of the week. The Adidas Dame 5 Star Wars collaboration. We'll have an announcement to make about the Kicks and Minivans podcast. We are going to be continuing with the 8-Minute Mondays and the full-length episodes up through the end of June. After June, for July and probably August, we're going to be pressing pause on the full-length episodes over the course of the summer. And we will be restarting them in the fall. We're not going away. And we'll be continuing 8-Minute Mondays throughout the course of the summer. But the reason for pausing is, there's many reasons for it. Some of it is just some planning and prepping purposes to be able to get out ahead of the thing. And some of it is what we're going to be talking about in our content today, that I'm hitting some guardrails. I've been hitting my limits. I've been brushing up against my limits lately. And I need a break. And that's okay. I got no shame in admitting that. But that was one of the things that I needed to take a break from, was being able to put this down for a little bit so that I can get to a little bit of a healthier place and stay in that healthy place. And so we'll be pressing pause. We'll be continuing the full-length episodes we have planned throughout the end of June, and then pausing the every other Wednesday releases through July and August. Continuing 8-Minute Mondays all throughout the summer, though, every single week. And we'll be back with the full-length episodes in September. But wanted to let you guys know that, because we're going to be talking about that a little bit in the content today. But again, as always, man, we love and appreciate every single one of you guys that listen in, download the episodes, listen to them. I love getting texts from some of you guys on, like, the morning the episode releases. You listen on your way into work. Man, that lifts me up, that fills me up. I'm so glad that this podcast has been able to be a blessing to so many of you guys as you're navigating marriage and parenthood. We're just honored to be a part of your journey as you're figuring out, just like I am, how to do the most important job in the world. So appreciate you being here. Always love for that. So the mission of this podcast is to help men win in marriage and parenting. And I believe the best way to do that is by helping men get to their healthiest point. Because I believe that the healthiest men will make the healthiest husbands and the healthiest dads. And I believe, man, like, if we can help change that narrative in our culture, I think we can make this world a better place. Like, I really do. But part of being healthy is knowing your limits. And there's this metaphor about guardrails, where if you notice a guardrail along a highway, the guardrail's up in a safe zone. The guardrail's up in a safe place before you get into the ditch to kind of warn you if you bump into it, like if you don't stop, you're going to go into a ditch. And so guardrails in our personal life are things that indicate to us that we might be heading off into a ditch. And personally in my life, I've been beating up against the guardrail lately. I've been hitting the guardrail, and if something doesn't change, if something doesn't give, I'm going to knock that guardrail down, and I'm going to bust right through it, and I'm going to drive into a ditch. And that's where I'm at in life right now. And I don't really have a lot of shame in sharing that. I don't host this podcast because I feel like I'm a perfect husband or a perfect dad or the healthiest guy in the world. Like, I'm none of those things. I host this podcast because I want to help other guys get there as I'm striving to get there too. And part of that is just being honest and saying, like, hey, I've been hitting my limit lately. I've been brushing right up against that guardrail lately, and something needs to change, something needs to give, or I'm going to knock that guardrail down and I'm going to wind up in a ditch. And that's just what it is. That's where I'm at right now. And that's okay. It's okay because I've hit the guardrail and I'm realigning. I'm refocusing. I'm taking action on it. But I want to talk about guardrails. I want to talk about minding your guardrails in this episode today. Because I think a crucial part of being healthy is knowing your limits. Because as guys, man, we want to believe that we have no limits. I think deep down, like, we know we have limits. We know what they are. But we want to believe we have no limits, right? It's like you watch these superhero shows and it's like, man, Thor has no limit. It's like, we want to believe that we can be that for our families. But at the end of the day, man, you're human just like I am, and we have limits. It doesn't make you a bad person. It just makes you a human. It doesn't make you a failure. It just makes you real. And it's okay. And when you start hitting those limits, what you do next is so crucial and so drastic. What you do when you start reaching those limits can have drastic implications on your family. And so, for me, some of the guardrails that I've had in place, some of the things that kind of warned me and cued me that it's like, hey, I need to make a change. For those of you that don't know, man, I've had, for several years now, I've had a battle with mental health, with depression and anxiety. It's not something I'm totally ashamed of. I just think, I'm a little ashamed of it. It's like I wish I was stronger. I wish I could overcome it. And it's like, hey, I've gone through a lot of work personally to get myself to a better place where it doesn't impact me the way that it used to. But lately, over the last, month or two, I've started getting to a point where it's like, hey, I'm really feel like I'm fighting that right now. And I have some of these guardrails that are kind of like cueing me in that I'm not as okay as I've been pretending to be. Or I'm starting to not be okay. Where it's like I've been okay for a while, I've been in where I feel like it's a pretty healthy space for a while. But I have some guardrails that are kind of cueing me in that, hey, I need to change something, right? And so some of those guardrails for me, I skipped church 2 weeks in a row. That might not seem like a big deal to you, but I'm someone that, hey, if we're not traveling, like, we go to church as a family. That's a value of ours. That's a core value of ours. And for no reason other than I just didn't want to go, I didn't feel like going, we skipped for 2 weeks. I can't remember if Becky took the kids without me or not. I think me skipping actually caused our whole family to miss. But like that's a huge warning flag to me. The fact that I skipped church 2 weeks in a row because I just didn't feel like going. I didn't feel like talking to people. I didn't feel like interacting. And then that's a part that ties into another warning cue is I isolate. I've been isolating lately. I've been blowing people off in text messages. I haven't been as eager to get together with people. That's a warning flag for me. I'm not extroverted. I define myself as kind of an extroverted introvert. I love getting together with people, but that's not what fuels me. That's not what fills me up. But I've been isolating and refusing even those one-on-one interactions, which is where I thrive. I love getting together one-on-one with people. But I've been isolating lately. It's been hard to get out of bed. It's like, man, if Becky's home with the kids, I will just run and hide in the room. If I know I don't have that responsibility of taking care of them, like, I'll just hide for as long as I can. I've been missing my workouts consistently, and that happens. That ebbs and flows from time to time. But hey, I've been so laser focused on my fitness goals lately. The fact that I've been missing workouts consistently is a warning flag, tied into I've just had a lack of motivation and ambition in general lately. And usually I'm a very motivated and ambitious person. But I haven't had that lately. And so these are all guardrails that it's like, hey, I'm bumping up against something that's telling me it's not okay. And all these things are little cues and warning lights that are like, hey, Kev, like, you're not as good as you think you are, actually. And it's like, I think deep down, like, I've known that. I've known I've been heading in that direction. But I needed to see some of these things before I drove off the edge into the ditch. I needed to see some of these things to kind of cue me in and say, like, hey, yeah, you need to make a change. Something needs to give. So what are your guardrails? Right? They might be similar to mine. They might be very different than mine. These are just some of the things that it's like, hey, I've noticed these in my life over the last couple weeks. And because of these, it's like, hey, I know my mental health could be taking me into a very, very bad spot right now if I don't course correct. And so what are yours? Identify those. But then what do you do when you hit a guardrail? It's one thing to be able to see that warning, but then what you do next is so important. And so for me, the first thing I had to do was tell someone. And the number one person is my wife. She's the first one that knows about everything. We really don't hide much of anything from each other. So she was the first one. And for some of you, like, she might be your first one. She might not be your first one. Wherever your marriage is at, that might, that's for you to decide. But you have to tell someone. And your wife should be a person you tell at some point, right? Might not be your number one, but she is someone you should tell at some point. But she shouldn't be the only one that you bring in, right? Because that's not a fair burden to her to say, like, hey, I'm close to hitting my limits. I'm close to my breaking point. That can add a lot of pressure to her if you're not also getting help from somewhere else, right? So friends, I immediately, like, once I started realizing I was hitting these, like, I immediately texted my two best friends and said, like, hey, this is what's going on. This is where I'm at. Like, can you pray for me? Can you help me out? As Justin said in the last episode, accountability buddies, right? Having friends that you can reach out to, that it's like, you don't have to give them a ton of backstory. You just have to fill them in on, like, the last day and be like, hey, this is what's happened in the last day or the last week. They don't need an hour-long backstory on how you got there, right? Like, friends that know you that well, that they just need the update, right? They don't need to download the whole thing. They just need the update. Having friends like that in your life can make all the difference. And, so many studies show that guys don't have one deep, significant guy friendship. And, man, if that's you, it's like, man, foster some friendships. And being a friend is the best way to make a friend. Is being a friend first. And, man, it's like, the friends that I have, dude, I value them so much. And the fact that I know that I can turn to them, I can turn to them, lean on them. When I'm in a spot like this right now, man, it makes all the difference in the world. If you're in a small group connected to your church, man, that is a great place to open up and share. Maybe you got family, a therapist, your fitness coach, like, whoever you tell. The point is, don't do it alone. You were created and designed to be in community with other people. And so bringing other people in and being vulnerable. And, man, some of the best ways I've cultivated friendships in my life was by being the first one to be vulnerable. Being vulnerable is not a weakness. It actually takes an inordinate amount of strength in order to be vulnerable. but it's the only way that we can heal. It's the only way we could get to a healthy spot is by being vulnerable. And this is, as an Enneagram 8, if you're into the Enneagram, this is so, like, being vulnerable is hardest for 8s than any other number, I think. But I've had to learn how to do it. It took a lot of practice. It still takes practice. I'm still not great at it. But learning to be vulnerable, allowing other people in, helps you realize you're not fighting this on your own. You don't have to do this on your own. So the first thing you do when you hit a guardrail, man, tell someone. The second thing, determine the source of it. What is it that's pushing you past your limit? Is it just too many things on your plate? Is it a broken relationship that you have with, maybe you're going through some marital stuff. Maybe it's a broken relationship with your dad or a friend that you need to repair. Maybe it's too much stuff. For me, it was just feeling overwhelmed with everything that I'm juggling. And I know some of y'all listening like, bro, you don't even have a full-time job. Like, but there's things that I'm juggling, man. It's like I treat this podcast as a full-time job. The pressure of raising 2 young boys at home full-time. Man, if you haven't stayed home listen, if you got a wife that stays home full-time with the kids, man, give her a break. Because, bro, these kids drive me nuts some days. I love them to death. I love that I get to be the one to stay home and help shape and form them. But, man, I'm exhausted. I appreciate so much when my wife allows me to take breaks and moments of rest by myself away from the kids so that I can fuel up. But for me, it was so many things that I was doing, so many plates that I was juggling, trying to keep them all spinning. And it's like at some point, I think I'm just realizing like, hey, I need to put 1 or 2 of these things down or I'm going to drop them all. Like, and that doesn't make me weak. That doesn't make me a bad person or a bad dad. Like, that just makes me human. Realizing that I am not God. I can't do all the things. Like, God keeps the whole universe running. I am not him. I can't handle all of those things. And so, the whole idea that I talked about on the other episode of choosing what you suck at, I needed to choose what I'm going to set down or life's going to choose it for me. And if I'm trying to keep 10 plates spinning right now, but I only have the capacity for 7, I need to choose what 3 I'm going to set down, or I might drop all 10. And so, the first thing, tell someone. The second thing, determine the source of it. The final thing, take action. Make a change. For me, that was choosing to set a couple plates down. That's taking a break, and they're not bad things. That's the thing. That's what made it so hard, is they're not bad things that I'm setting down. They're good things. They're things that I want to do. They're ways that I want to help other people. But ultimately, it's like, hey, I need to say no to something so I can say yes to other things. And I had to prioritize, all right, where is my time most needed? Where is my energy and my influence most needed right now? And what do I need to say no to? Maybe for a long time, maybe for a season, but what do I need to say no to in order to say yes to other things? And so you can choose the change, or you can choose to have the change chosen for you, right? But like, what are you going to set down before life tells you what you're going to drop? And so for me, a couple of the things that I set down, one of them was volunteering at our church. And I hate doing that because I worked as a kids and youth pastor for 8 years. I know how hard it is to recruit and train and retain volunteers. And I feel like I'm letting the church down. I hate that feeling. I hate it so much. But that was one of the things where I said, like, okay, something has to give, and this is one of the things. Another is choosing to press pause on this podcast. I've been debating for a couple months now, really since launch, like just the idea, not because I needed a break, just the idea of, the wisdom and the strategy behind like, hey, should I pause the podcast for the summer? A lot of people do that, just to help them, get a chance to plan and get ahead, get a couple episodes recorded and in the bank, so to say. Where it's like, I've been debating that really since launch of like, hey, will we go up to summer? Will we continue through summer? Will we pause? And right now, in the last week or two, kind of made the decision to say like, hey, I need to set this down for right now. And just for a month or two, I do believe that this is God wants me doing this right now. I fully believe that with my whole soul, that God wants me doing this right now. But I also believe God wants me to be in a healthy place. And so right now, setting it down, pushing pause on the full-time episodes over the summer for a month or two, give me a chance to rest, recuperate. I have an absolute blast, enjoy doing this, getting to interview people, getting to do solo pieces. I absolutely love this. It is one of my favorite things to do right now is this podcast. But I also need a break. And I also realize I'm beating up against that guardrail right now. And if I don't set something down, I'm going to bust right through it. And so being able to set this down so that I can pick it back up. But when you're hitting that guardrail, you got to tell someone, you got to determine the source, and you got to take action, make a change. Those are so important to do because an essential part of being healthy is knowing your limits, knowing your boundaries, recognizing you're not a superhero. You're not Superman. You're not God. You have limits, and that's okay. It just makes you a human. And it takes a man to realize and recognize his limits and make conscious decisions for the sake of his family on what he's going to step back from, what he's going to step away from for a season so he can do the things that matter most. And so the drop for this week is simple. It's so simple, man. What are your guardrails? What are your guardrails? Have you been hitting them? Do you need to course correct? Evaluate that in your own life. And maybe you need to talk to someone. Maybe you need to sit down in therapy. Maybe you need to talk to a friend. Maybe you need to get on NALeader.com and schedule a leadership session with Nate. Maybe you need to do some of these things to be able to get to a healthier spot. But what are your guardrails? Do you have them in place? Do you have other people that know enough about your life to be able to help you and love you and guide you to a healthier spot? And do you need to take action? Do you need to make a change where you're at right now? Thank you guys for joining in. Wherever you're at, man, take care of yourself. Take care of your family. This is Kicks and Minivans.